Hey there, Mr. Redder here. Welcome back to another episode of Reddit Podcast Stories, where today, my Karen wife is demanding I sell the business that I love. My wife, who's 35, and I, 42 male, have been together for 14 years. This year, after 9 years of university and residency, she is officially an MD, anesthesiology, which is why it took 9 years. I'm incredibly proud of her. Now, I'm a tuna fisherman and charter owner. I own 2 boats and licenses through my company. I bought the first license at 21, the second at 25. Both are now paid off. I make a very good living. I charge $2,000 for a day of tuna fishing per person, up to 5 clients per day from July 15th to November 15th, and I'm booked at least a year in advance. But the money, while obviously important, isn't the draw for me. This is truly my passion. It's the only job I've ever known, and I can't imagine my life without it. I left this year the first week of July, as I always do. But this year, my wife has started insisting that I start to think about selling the licenses and the boats because she feels it's time to start a family, and that since she's a doctor, I should sell them to stay home, raise our kids, and be home all year. I told her in no uncertain terms that I love her. I want kids with her, but I am not now or for the foreseeable future selling my businesses or giving up the business that I have loved since I first went tuna fishing with my father when I was 12. I would be miserable without it. Now I want to be clear. My wife has no power over my business. I got an ironclad prenup to protect my business and home and property before we got married. It doesn't protect our personal assets or accounts. She would be entitled to half of our savings, and it's not like my wife was hard done by. She didn't pay a penny for her education. I paid the bill to the tune of hundreds of thousands. I paid for our home, bought her a vehicle to travel to school with, so there's no financial mistreatment on my part. Her issue with my job is that I'm not home for 4 months a year. We live in Ontario, Canada, but my charter boats are on the southeastern shore of Nova Scotia, and that my job is dangerous. She knew both these things from our very first date. My wife is adamant that she wants this done, and it just isn't happening. She keeps saying how she'll be so busy as a doctor that she can't be home to raise the kids, but personally, I don't see how that's any different than my situation, aside from me actually having 8 months a year off. I'm not sure why she thinks that I should give up my dream job now that she has attained hers. Personally, I feel that she's ashamed to tell her new snooty work friends that I'm a fisherman, even though I make as much or more as they do, as this literally began as soon as she started her new job and started hanging around with a much higher class of people. A class of people that I'm not fond of, but I would never tell her who to have as friends. She denies this, but the way she suddenly altered her friend circle and started fighting with me about this as soon as she finished her residency and started her new job with her new friends tells me otherwise. She also has expressed interest in selling our property, 120 acres, to move to a condo in the city, and that's another area I just won't compromise. I did offer her that we could look at buying a condo and living there during winter, but I'm not selling my property. She also doesn't want to accept that. I'm willing to compromise, but this is my home and we can afford it. I'm not giving it up. When I'm not working, I'm hunting and fishing on this land. It's my favorite place in the world that isn't the Atlantic Ocean. I have no intention of retiring for at least another 25 years, and when I do, I plan to give the licenses and gear to my son from a previous relationship, and the reason I built this business to begin with. I never wanted my son to see me as a failure. He's 20 and is a mate on my second boat. My wife seems to think I'm a jerk because I want to be gone from her 4 months a year, and because with my investment portfolio and business worth multiple $1 million, I absolutely could retire and live well. I think she's the jerk, because she seems to think that I should be miserable in order to make her happy. I'm honestly not sure my marriage can survive this because there's absolutely no chance that I'm selling my business or retiring. But am I wrong here? Am I the jerk? I literally spent a decade making her life as easy as I possibly could. I'm in no way saying med school is easy, but she finished with no debt or responsibilities outside of the home. Few med students can say that. I also feel there's been a big change in the way she looks at me and my profession ever since she became a doctor. The profession that paid for her to get to where she is today. I am who I am, a country boy who had a dream to make a living doing something he loved. I feel like she feels that having a fisherman husband is embarrassing now that she's a doctor. There's 3 things I want to be clear about before people go there. 1. Nobody is cheating or suspects the other is cheating. 2. Never has there been any expectation that I would retire young. I never suggested it, and she never brought it up until these past few months. And 3. We can afford whatever help we would need to help with our future kids for the months I'm gone. but she doesn't want her kids to be raised by nannies. So Reddit, am I the jerk? If my marriage falls apart, is this my fault? Because this is weighing extremely heavy on me right now, but I don't feel I'm in the wrong in any way. Edit. So I wrote my wife a long email. No, this is not how we generally communicate, but she's on call and staying at the hospital. She called me back, quite upset, especially since I told her I felt she was ashamed of having a fisherman for a husband. After she stopped crying, she told me that this was absurd and definitely not the problem, and that while she hates me being gone for 4 months, that's not even why she's so upset. She can get through that part. She's worried about the danger associated with my job. My wife is risk averse. I've known that forever. I am quite the opposite. My dad raced dirt track, my mom skydived and wingsuited regularly, and I grew up on the water with multiple uncles who were lobster fishermen, snow crab fishermen, miners, and lumberjacks. My mom had 17 brothers and sisters, and yes, that's all one marriage. My grandmother birthed them all. I went back east every summer to fish. I love it. But she's not wrong that with that comes the danger that someday I just won't be gone for 4 months. I'll be gone for good. I have the best of gear. Our boats carry rescue capsules, and us captains look out for each other, but accidents do happen. I've seen tiny communities devastated, losing 5 young men to the sea. I've done search and rescue and pulled bodies from the water. She said she's always been scared, but it's gotten worse these last couple of years. And apparently, her mom has been in her ear about it a lot. I love her mom, but she can definitely habitually press my wife on our future plans for family, probably causing her more stress than is fair. We're going to seek therapy as a couple, and for her personally, because she says she definitely doesn't want a divorce, and that she's never been ashamed of what I do and realizes what I've done for her. That's why she shot down the nanny suggestion, not because she was against it, but because she was irrationally trying to get me to bend to her out of fear. I also want her to get help with dealing with her mom from whatever therapist she chooses. She does want a place in the city, and I definitely understand that. She didn't seem to believe we could afford both. Downtown Toronto is expensive, and it's true she doesn't know my finances. Don't get me wrong, she realizes in rough estimates how much money the business makes, but my job also has major expenses. I assured her that between the two of us, we can afford a second home. I'll still have my hunting property and sanctuary, and she gets to be closer to the hospital and much better multicultural experience, which I know she enjoys. We're going to look at renting a place for a while, because the Canadian housing market is on the verge of collapse with interest rates as they are now. It's worth renting for a year or two to see if prices drop. I was clear with her that I don't plan to stop fishing for many years yet, but that when my son is ready, I will let him take up some of the work captaining my boat so that I'm at least home for a week here and there, at least until second boat captain retires at the end of 2025 and I give that boat to my son full-time. But we can figure that out later. Ending my 5-year marriage over a paternity test my mother-in-law requested. I don't know where to start. This whole situation is embarrassing and I'm just done with it. I've been with my husband for 5 years now, married for 3. Well, long story short, his mom was always overwhelming and bold with her input on everything, to put it nicely. I genuinely think it's not fair to be mad at your partner for something he didn't do himself. He can't control what his mom does or says. But what's also not fair is him not addressing it when I'm clearly uncomfortable or upset, and instead just talking me into brushing it off or going with it. I never, nor would I ever, have a back and forth with my mother-in-law. It's just not worth barking at each other. I always kind of brush it off if it's a snarky comment or if it's a better way to do something in her opinion. I'll just tell her thanks for the suggestion, but we're good. It's actually true, the saying, when you marry someone, you marry their family. I think the way to handle it is each spouse should keep his side of the family in line, for lack of a better way to say it. I deal with my parents and their shenanigans, and I expected him to do the same. He never did. He always asks me to give her some grace. Well, it's hard when that person is insulting you. For a while now, she's been making comments about how my son doesn't look like my husband when he was a toddler, basically accusing me of sleeping around. This definitely upset me. Sorry, my genes are strong. What do I tell you? I was short with my husband because he didn't address how out of pocket and disrespectful this whole thing is. It's been a week since my husband, well, soon-to-be ex-husband, told me that he would be doing a paternity DNA test, not because he thinks that it's not his son, but to shut his mom up. Yes, that's what he said. I don't know which one is worse, him accusing me of cheating or this crap, but all I know is this is audacious. I didn't cheat, and I'm not concerned one bit about the test results. I wasn't going to stop him from taking a DNA test or whatever, but I just know that I don't want to deal with this any longer. I'm looking for an appointment, and I've talked to a lawyer the day after he brought up the DNA test, and I've been acting more than normal since. We'll be getting the results in 2 days. I can't wait. He will also be getting divorce papers with that too. I know for a fact he won't even see it coming. I tried my best to make this whole thing work and manage my relationship with my mother-in-law as gracefully as possible. But thinking about it, it's not just my mother-in-law that's the problem, but how he's handling things that's also a problem. And side note, I've never been more glad that I didn't leave my job when I got married. He makes more than enough to take care of the financial side of things. I thought I would get bored. I only have to be on site 2 days per week. Also, I really love my job and the company, so I didn't leave. Best decision I ever made. He is unreliable to say the least. I know that divorce can be hard on kids, but I experienced the other side, living with 2 parents that hated each other and fought almost all of the time. It was hard. They thought that staying together would be good for me and my siblings. Newsflash, it wasn't. It was horrible to say the least. I either read somewhere or maybe my therapist told me that when you fight with your spouse, you shouldn't see it as me versus you, but more like me and you versus the particular situation or problem on hand and try to figure it out. But it's really hard to do so when you start hating that person. I don't want my son to live like that because I just can't stand my husband anymore. I don't know if this is a weird way of saying it, but I just don't respect him anymore, if that makes sense. I just see an unreliable man, and I know for a fact that our fights won't be the same as before. I would have said what a waste of 5 years, but I have a sweet and smart gremlin now, and having a kid really pushes you to be a better person and to do better, so I can't complain. Update. I have a comment about my last post. Please, if you're going through something serious, think twice before posting it. Obviously, I was expecting people to tell me I'm overreacting, or even that I'm a jerk. But there are also people who would leave you with comments like, "You're a disgusting jerk. I hope he takes your kid away from you during the divorce and you realize what kind of monster you are," and go on about their day, which was my cue to stop reading comments that night. The day he was supposed to receive the results, I called my father-in-law and invited them to come over that evening. He was working when he got the results. He sent them to me and told me that he would talk to his mother to finally put this to rest. I informed him that I had already invited them for this evening, and I'm just waiting for my apology before I leave. I asked that he come home so we can talk before they come over. He called, and I basically told him that this is not working for me anymore. I've already talked to an attorney, filed for divorce, and it might be more expensive than a paternity test, but it would be more effective making his mother happy. And no, I don't care that he was working when I told him. I don't think you would have either. He left work and came home. Long story short, we had a spectacular fight. He said that I'm not thinking about my son and I'm overreacting because it's not like he went behind my back. And if he knew that I was this upset, he wouldn't have done it. But he knew. We fought about it when he brought it up. He just didn't care. When I gave him the divorce papers, he said he's not signing anything and he'll ask his mother to apologize when his parents arrive and get done with this. Listen, I don't need him to sign it to get a divorce. It would only make things complicated, but that's it. His mother said she has nothing to apologize for. She wouldn't apologize for having suspicions. She didn't accuse me of anything, and I can leave if I want to. So that's that. I did leave that night because I wasn't going to get an apology, and he didn't seem to understand that him reinforcing that it's okay for her to meddle is why I wanted a divorce in the first place. He eventually told his parents he'll be coming over from time to check up on them. He's their only kid, and not to bother coming over anymore until she apologizes. She wasn't amused. She told me I'm taking her son away. She's not someone that you can talk to, I'll tell you that much. It's like talking to a brick wall. All she knows is insulting or being passive-aggressive on a good day. We're not getting a divorce. We talked the day after. He said I can always file for a divorce, but we should at least try couples counseling because he doesn't want a co-parent. Edit. He doesn't want to lose his son, plain and simple. Although it's not like if we were to get divorced, he wouldn't be able to see him, but whatever. He did say, when we talked the second time, that he can now see that he was wrong, especially knowing his mother. He also mentioned that he'll just shut her down if she meddles this time. But what can I do with just words? I hope he can learn a thing or two on how to deal with his mother in counseling, because she's truly overwhelming. If counseling would help him understand that a couple means 2 people, not 3, and our marriage is a bit crowded right now, then that's enough for me. People saying that I'm overreacting in my last post made me ask myself, do I actually want a divorce or am I just mad? I wanted the divorce at the time. It seemed like the only solution. But if counseling would help us, I can try to work things out. I hope this is a good decision. If not, I am not stuck. I'll take my son and leave. I have a friend who got divorced in 20 days. When you're on the same page regarding how things would be divided, including custody, it's a matter of how long the court would take to review and finalize the divorce, and you'll be done. That was my plan. Nonetheless, I'm the one working from home, and my son is still so young. It's totally up to him. If he wants to see his son every day when he gets off work, or if he wants to see his son just a couple of times per week, because I'm not tolerating this anymore. Oh, one last thing. People in my last post were debating if paternity tests should be mandatory or not. I thought that from what I wrote, it was clear I didn't cheat, and I have nothing against paternity tests. It should be obvious to everyone that it's not fair for the kid nor the man to be tricked into living a lie. If he was the one who had suspicions, that's a big deal. We would have talked about why he thinks that, taken the paternity test for his peace of mind, and made sure we can trust each other before moving on, all without anyone interfering, let alone requesting it. Am I the jerk for telling my son he needs to live with the consequences of ignoring what his kids were saying? My son lost his first wife when their 2 kids were preschoolers. My grandson is now 17, and my granddaughter is almost 16. Their relationship with my son has been on a downward spiral for years. It started when he and his current wife moved in together. She had 2 kids of her own, and early on they showed extreme jealousy whenever their mom would pay any attention or buy anything for my grandkids. They were older, teenagers, and said a number of cruel things to my grandkids. My grandkids told my son, they told my wife and I, and we spoke to our son, but he ignored all 4 of us. My wife also spoke to my son's second wife prior to the wedding, and she said her kids would adjust in time. My grandkids spent years living with 2 much older kids who said all kinds of mean stuff to them that they shouldn't have been saying. They accused them of stealing from them because their mom shouldn't be doing anything for them. They accused the younger kids of stealing from them because their mom shouldn't be doing anything for them. There were incidents where they broke the stuff their mom bought my grandkids. My wife and I pleaded with our son to do something to help his kids. We said they didn't deserve to be raised like that. The problems continued even after the older kids moved out. They still expressed a lot of jealousy and hatred for my grandkids. I never interacted much with my son's stepkids. I saw them a handful of times over the years my son has been married to his current wife. They would mostly go to their dad if my son and his wife were spending time with us or any of our other kids. Or they would reject offers to spend time with us. But the few times I did see them, I was always shocked by how blatant their hatred was and how my son never appeared to care. One incident in particular stands out. It was my granddaughter's birthday, and she got some art kit that she had wanted. It set off the 2 older kids who called their names, and they even broke part of the kit. My wife and I spoke up to our son and his wife, but they did nothing and said nothing. My grandkids now spend a lot of time with myself and my wife. They hardly speak to their dad despite living under his roof. They wanted us to get custody of them, but we were denied, so they have taken to doing their best to make it through the next 2 years. My son is only now starting to care that the relationship with his kids has been destroyed. He asked me why we tried to fight for custody of the kids when he's their dad, and he accused my wife and I of turning the kids against him. This is when I stopped him, and I said we didn't turn them against him. He's just living with the consequences of ignoring what they've been telling him. I told him he put them through years of bullying so he could get married and stay married, and now he has to live with his decision. My son ranted at me and said the last thing any parent should do is try to make their kid feel crappy about themselves, which is what I was doing. Am I the jerk? Not the jerk. Wow, the irony of your son suggesting that you are making him feel bad. What about how bad he's made his kids feel for years? The obliviousness of some people. Good luck helping those kids make it through the next year until they can both move out. One question, did you take the time to tell your step-grandkids off? If you haven't, might I suggest you do that as soon as possible and in front of your grandkids? I bet they would really love to see that. OP, I never called them out. We hardly ever saw them, and we don't see them at all now. My girlfriend has one incredibly annoying habit that I cannot stand. Okay, this is gonna sound petty. I promise you it isn't to me. We've been dating for almost 2 years, and in almost every way, she's the one for me. I want to get married to her. However, I realize this sounds so petty, but for some reason it bothers me so much. She has the absolute worst restaurant etiquette. 1, she barely tips. We both have good jobs. Money's not a problem for her or I. We kind of take turns paying when we go out to eat. I normally tip 20%, maybe a little more or less depending on the situation. Over the weekend, she tipped $3 on a $46 bill. Sometimes I've tried to leave cash on the table, but she gets upset, takes it, and hands it back to me. We've only had a few fights, and almost every one of them have started like this. She's absolutely convinced that throwing a few dollars is more than enough. She gets all of this from her family. Her parents took us out last Christmas to a very expensive steakhouse. Her dad made an absolute scene and production of tipping $20 on a $500 plus bill because it's the holidays. 2. She sends almost every dish back. Something is always wrong with whatever she ordered. The hamburger is not done enough or done too much. There's dirt in the lettuce in her salad. The pasta isn't cooked enough. You get the idea. Every time. 3. She expects the waitstaff to be paying attention to her needs instantaneously. She's not necessarily verbally mistreating them, but she does keep making demands. Water or iced tea needs to be constantly refilled. We need more napkins. This fork is dirty, etc. If she's expecting or asking for something and that person isn't right there, she'll start asking me, loudly, where are they to get some attention? And 4. She argues over the bill every time, demanding to speak with the manager to have something taken off or reduced because she wasn't satisfied. It doesn't matter if it's Applebee's or the Capitol Grill. Never pay the full amount. I'm 100% sure this all comes from how her parents act in restaurants. I've seen them do this every time we've gone out to eat together. It isn't a money thing either. They're not struggling. It's to the point that I don't like going out to eat with her because I know what's going to happen. She's completely aware of how tipping is supposed to work, but insists that it's optional and to stop throwing money away. There's no other situation where she has this antisocial behavior except restaurants. I can't get my mind around it. Everywhere else, she's kind, reasonable, sweet person, but as soon as she's in a restaurant, she turns into this. How do I convince her that this type of behavior needs to change and is really bothersome and antisocial? I've tried explaining time and time again, and it goes in one ear and out the other. You need to tell her that if this behavior while dining out doesn't drastically change, that you'll no longer be interested in going out to eat with her anymore. I was in the service industry for over 10 years, and one of the things I look for in people, friends or partners, is how they treat others when they are in a perceived position of power. As the customer, you're technically in the power position because even if you're a jerk, your server has to be pleasant with you. Then we go back into the kitchen and talk about what a jerk you are. So she uses this opportunity where she has the upper hand to be absolutely terrible. This is a big deal, and I doubt you'll ever convince her otherwise. She does this because she thinks she's above those serving her. Petty? Dude, that's not petty at all. The fact that you know she's going to send food back before the food has even arrived is infuriating. I would start telling waitresses when you sit down, hey, just a heads up, my girlfriend will probably send the food back after it arrives and then demand a discount on the bill, so just be ready for that. If she really sees no problem with the behavior, then she shouldn't have any problem being open about it, right? I'm sorry, but your girlfriend is a bad person. I could never date someone like that. Edit. For everyone that says you shouldn't do this to people you date, totally agree. But we all have an in-law or two that acts like this, right? Maybe toss a log in the fire the next time you're out with a crappy family member that does this, and do this to them. If you think warning a stranger of your partner's behavior every time you go out is a good long-term solution, just end the relationship. This girl has so many red flags, they would be given special treatment on Twitter. I'm 27, male. My ex-girlfriend, who's 26, wants to try again. My ex-girlfriend and I first got together 6 years ago, and from day one, we got on like two peas in a pod. Then after 2.5 years together, she fell pregnant. We had spoken about kids before, and we both wanted a family, but not after just 2 years together. We spoke about it a lot, asked a few of our friends that already had kids, and eventually decided to go for it. We also agreed that even if our relationship doesn't last, our kids' well-being would always come first. Right before the lockdown in 2020, 3 weeks before the due date, we welcomed a perfect little girl, and both of us were completely infatuated. It was a big adjustment, but our girl was an angel, and we settled into parenthood rather quickly. Everything was going great at first, but 3 months later, it all changed. I was working late when I got a text from my mother saying that my girlfriend dropped our daughter off while she ran some errands, but 4 hours later she hadn't returned, and now she wasn't answering her phone. I called too, but she didn't answer me either. I got out of work, collected my daughter, and went home to find a note from my girlfriend. She said that she couldn't handle the stress of lockdown and the baby, and she just needed some time to clear her head. She also said not to call and that we would talk soon. but days turned to weeks with no contact from her or anyone else other than her sister, who visited my niece often but never mentioned my girlfriend. Fast forward 3 years, and my ex-girlfriend is slowly starting to reach out again. It was slow at first, liking photos of our girl on Instagram and the odd comment, but that was it until last week. She sent me a text saying that she had seen how well our daughter and I are doing and asking if we could meet up. I was reluctant, but we agreed before our daughter was born that her well-being is what mattered the most, so reluctantly, I agreed to meet for a coffee so she can see our girl. But I'm having second thoughts. How do I forgive her for walking out on me, and more importantly, on our daughter? Update. As we agreed, my ex and I met up a few days ago in a local cafe, and I got there early to try and work out what I was going to say to her after 3 years. While I hadn't mentioned it in my original post, I had no intention of bringing our daughter along. My ex had contact numbers of my family members, so she was with a coworker. And when my ex arrived, she was a little disappointed, but not all that surprised to see that I was alone. The next few minutes mainly consisted of small talk before we eventually addressed the enormous elephant in the room, where she had been hiding for 3 years of our daughter's life. She admitted that she had suffered a lot with postpartum depression and she couldn't bear to show it in front of our girl. She acknowledged that leaving the way she did was wrong, but she wanted to be able to focus solely on herself while she got therapy. I asked why it took her 3 years to resurface. She sent a text for our daughter's first birthday, but that was it. And she broke down, admitting that she was so scared of what I thought of her for disappearing. In a way, she was right to be scared, because while I could come to terms with being dumped, I was furious because she left our daughter. Throughout our conversation, I could tell she's grown a lot as a person over the last few years, which is something. We spoke for well over an hour, and when I finally got up to leave, she asked where we stood. I told her that I appreciate that she's really been trying to turn her life around, but it's going to take time for me to fully move on. But as a show of good faith, I showed her a video of our girl. It's about 6 or 7 months old, but it's my favorite. It's her and one of my dad's cows mooing at each other. Just before I left, I got her phone number so we can maintain a bit of proper contact rather than through social media, and I agreed to send her a couple of pictures of our daughter. I appreciate all of the advice I got last time, and I'm wondering where my ex and I go from here. My hope is that we can coexist and maintain a healthy friendship for our daughter's sake, but after what happened before, it's hard to fully trust my ex. What do you guys think? Side note, 2 things I didn't mention to my ex. I have zero intentions of rekindling our relationship. I'm open to co-parenting if she can prove she's not going to pull another disappearing act, but that's it. I really loved her once, but I'm a different person now, and that ship has well and truly sailed. At one point, I considered putting our girl up for adoption. She was about 9 months at the time. I was mentally and emotionally drained. Work was stressing me out, and coming home to my daughter just didn't give me any joy as much as I love her. I was going through the process, but one night I looked in at her in her cot. She looked back at me, and the look on her little face, a cute little smile, and her blue eyes shining like I was her whole world. It told me that things would get better, so I canceled the adoption and never looked back. Update 2. So, down to business. Per my ex's request, I accompanied her to a session with her therapist, and she reassured me that she and my ex have made good progress, but she still has some issues to work through. Specifically, her relationship with her parents. She told me they separated and her mother had a temper, but I didn't know how bad it really was. After the session, my ex left and I hung on for a minute to ask her therapist for her opinion regarding reintroducing my daughter to my ex. She recommended holding off for now and offered me a free session to talk about it, so I'm going to see her next week. On a more positive note, my daughter started preschool 2 weeks ago and is already making friends and has been absolutely loving life. And I sent my ex a few photos of her to show some support, so things are looking up. Thanks again to everyone that has commented so far. The support that I've been getting is incredible. Makes the struggle of raising a kid alone a little better. My own daughter stole $62,000 from me. My wife and I are in the fortunate position of being wealthy. We had to work very hard to get to where we are, and we never forgot where we came from. Our kids grew up as rich kids, but we never spoiled them, even when we could have. They went to nice schools and had nice things, but they also had summer jobs and after-school jobs to pay for their own extras. We also push philanthropy in our family, so our kids recognize they are privileged and that our life isn't even remotely how regular people live. I'd say for the most part, our kids have grown up to be respectful and good people. Our oldest kids are twin boys, and their sister is 18 months younger than them. All 3 are in college now. Our youngest 2 are in 8th grade. I got a call from our bank a couple days ago saying that someone had cashed a check that was charged to our bank account in the amount of $61,347, and that the check had been made out to the tuition office at the university my oldest 3 kids attend. Naturally, I investigated the matter myself with the university and I got some answers. I pieced together that one of my kids snagged my checkbook and wrote a tuition check for a friend of theirs. There's a much bigger story behind why this kid couldn't pay, but that's private, and my wife and I agreed to fund this young person's education because of their private struggles. I grilled my kids and figured out that it was our daughter, Joanna. Joanna was apologetic, but she was also quite insistent that she stood behind her actions. I respect my daughter for her convictions, and she really did have good reasons for why she did it. But the fact remains that she stole, and then she hid it from us. Joanna asked what her punishment is, and I told her to get a job because she now owes her mother and I $62,000. Here's the thing. I don't expect Joanna to pay us back, and if she came to me tomorrow with the money, I wouldn't even take it. What I want is to see her make an effort, an acknowledgement of her actions and the consequences. If I see that she's actively trying, I'll tell her that she doesn't have to pay me back. She's my kid and I love her, so all I want is for her to learn a lesson. But Joanna doesn't know any of this. All she thinks is that she now owes me $62,000, so naturally I'm a horrible father and a very mean person. Am I the jerk? Not the jerk. I actually think you should follow through and expect her to pay it back in full. Same. Otherwise, she'll think from now on, oh, I just have to do what he wants for a couple weeks and I'll be good. My husband saw this post as well and thought of a good idea. OP lets the kid get a job and lets her pay him back for a year. Don't tell her it's just for a year, but at the end of the year, forgive the rest of the money. So she gets to spend a whole year learning the value of $1, as she clearly doesn't right now, and see how little a minimum wage job will even make a dent in that kind of money. And he can either keep the money or put it in savings for her for a later event. I think you're on spot for how you're addressing the sneaking, stealing, and lies. I'm sure you made it clear had she come to you and made a case for helping this person out, there would have been no consequence, but that the disciplinary action is a result of the dishonesty and the theft, not the jerk. Well, what do you think? Is OP the jerk for the way they're punishing her or not? Please let us know. I think this is what you call great parenting. Am I the jerk for evicting our tenants of 22 years? Our son is 22 years old. When he was born, we bought a second home, always with the intention of gifting it to him when he was an adult. It's a modest home, 2-bedroom bungalow with a developed basement that has an additional room, about 10 minutes from where we live. When we bought it, we listed it for rent, and a lovely couple started renting. They went on to have 6 kids. They chose not to move and continued living in the 3-bedroom home with the kids. The dad works, the mom stays home. Important to note that we bought this home in the year 2000. Even with a 15-year mortgage, the mortgage was quite low, and the rent not much more than the mortgage. We've only raised the rent 4 times in the 22 years that they've lived there, and the rent is still well below average for our area. I did look it up. An average rent where we are for a similar house is $2,000 to $2,600 a month. Our renters have only been paying $1,300 a month. When they started renting, we did talk to them. We did tell them that this house was eventually for our son. We never actually expected to have the same renters for 22 years. Our son graduated university in June and has been staying with us since then. But he's a responsible young man, and we decided that Christmas would be a good time to gift him this home. At the beginning of September, we talked to our tenants and gave them a 2-month election notice, figuring we'd have November and December to get the house cleaned on any repairs done. Understandably, they are not happy. They've been posting all over social media about what bad people we are, kicking them out, how they can't afford to rent anything big enough for their family. Their oldest kid, who's 19, even found my son on Facebook and sent him a horrible message. He had no idea we were planning to gift this to him. Their Facebook posts have been shared in our local community groups, and everyone is commenting about what evil landlords we are. Am I the jerk for evicting long-term tenants so our son can move in? Edit to add. We did mention gifting the house to our son when he started university, so we told them when they moved in back in 2000 and when he started uni in 2018. Edit 2. It wasn't a legal eviction notice. We also didn't break the lease. 5 years ago, they decided not to renew as they thought they might buy soon and moved to a month-to-month lease. Edit 3. It seems 2 months is not long enough notice. I have sent them an email giving them an additional 2 months, bringing it up to 4 months notice. Edit 4. I sent this to my husband. He told me when he was there in April installing a new hot water tank that he told them, well, the dad, that we'd likely be giving notice this summer. What kind of entitled nonsense is going on here where people are calling you a villain? All renters know that they aren't paying for their own mortgage and they have no entitlement to your property whatsoever. They're on a month-to-month lease. You're telling me that lease is ending. They should have saved up money for this. 60 days is a great deal of notice for people who told you years ago that they wanted to buy a house and didn't want to resign the lease. This BS about getting a house you didn't pay for is just a load of BS. You did. Your credit is on that house. You did the down payment, which is what allows the mortgage to be so low. And the home loan is in your name. Not the jerk. These comments are so entitled. Not the jerk. You literally gave them 22 years to prepare. How could you be the jerk? Everyone here saying you're the jerk is insane. You've been more than fair, even keeping them at a low rent. How could they say you're the jerk? You aren't responsible for providing them housing. Based on their actions, I would hold firm on a 2-month deadline. Had they been civil, I would have extended it, but they do not deserve it. You will be lucky if they don't wreck the house at this point. Everyone sucks here. It's your right to evict them, but I feel like 2 months is way too short notice given that they've lived there for 22 years, they have 6 kids and only 1 income. The holidays are coming up, and we're in a recession where inflation is insane. You only charge them about half of what rent is going to cost them anywhere else, so they're going to have to get a different job or another job to afford it, and the job market is horrible at the moment. That being said, they could have talked to you about being able to stay there longer until they can make arrangements to afford a similar house, but they chose to get on Facebook and be salty rather than do anything productive. ETA 2. The amount of y'all telling me it's not OP's responsibility, blah blah blah. First of all, learn to read, cause I never said it was. Second of all, do y'all live in caves and never interact with people outside of the internet? Must be the case if y'all have absolutely no sense of compassion. You can tell me I'm wrong till you're blue in the face, but you simply will not convince me that having compassion for others is wrong. Stay mad about it. Do this next. Tap here on your screen to come see our new podcast playlist, where you'll find thousands of hours of the best stories you've ever heard. Or tap the one on the right. That episode is specifically just for you, based on other videos you've enjoyed the most.